Let me introduce my panel first. In addition to Otis, we have Brad Broders, local ABC24 News reporter, and Reverend Ken Whalen with the new Olivet Worship Center. Thanks all three of you for being here. Let's start with this redistricting thing that we think we finally have a plan that will be voted on this next week coming up. And the way it shakes out, Otis, isn't a lot different than what we've been looking at. But the bottom line is Nashville's being split up into 3 districts, basically eliminating a Democratic seat, they think. In as far as West Tennessee, districts 8 and 9, which is suburban Memphis, and West Tennessee and Steve Cohen's Memphis seat. That's changing up a little bit too. They're kind of splitting Tipton County and Shelby County in half. Right. And the only state redistricting that might be interesting is the state Senate seat of Brian Kelsey, who represents Germantown, and now he's going to represent a lot more of Collierville than he is of Memphis, which should be more Republican friendly for him as he faces some serious allegations at the federal level as well. So a lot going on. Of all those things I'm talking about, which interests you the most?
Well, I think the big thing that interests me is what's going on in Nashville. I know, Memphis and Nashville, we're 200 miles away, but this is an important situation that's going on up there, Richard. What we see here is, again, you mentioned the city of Nashville is being divvied up into 3 different congressional districts. What that means for African Americans in Nashville, which is the 2nd largest Democratic voting base in the state, it means that their influence on congressional elections will basically go down to almost nothing. There will be no more than 16% of African Americans in any one congressional district, and it goes down from there. So their vote is being diluted. I expect that there will be a legal challenge to this because, again, you really should not be trying to dilute voters of color to that degree. And I think that is the big thing that I'm watching. The others, yeah, I mean, you can make a quibble here and there about it, but the big deal here is what's going on in Nashville with those 3 districts. All
right, well, Reverend Whalen, what do you think about that? Because I know in the past you've said, look, part of the perks of winning is you get to make these kinds of decisions, and do you feel like there's an ulterior motive here? Are they trying to split up the black vote, or just Democrats, or are they one and the same?
Yeah, I don't think the motive is ulterior at all. I agree with Otis 100%. The Republicans are, I think, very upfront about it. I know what they're trying to do. They know what they're trying to do, and they're doing it. The unfortunate thing for me, Richard, is that Otis is right. There is going to be a lawsuit, at least one, and we'll have some more rich lawyers coming out with very little to show for it in terms of black voting strength in Nashville and black voting results in Nashville. I don't think we can divorce the two. It's good to stand up for voting rights, but I think we also should stand up when we don't take advantage of those rights.
Brad, so this sets up a situation where you're looking at Tennessee. We know it's a deep red state anyway, but we had 2 Democratic congressional seats right now, and that's likely to only likely to be 1 left in Steve Cohen's seat when this is all said and done.
Yeah, Richard, and to follow up on what Otis and Reverend Whalen were saying, I mean, this is thinking big picture for the future control of the House. The House, they're trying to pick off just a handful of seats, flip that from Democrat to Republican. Based on redistricting alone, it looks like Republicans have a very strong shot of taking the chamber and likely having Kevin McCarthy being the next House Speaker. And you chip away 1 seat in 1 state and 3 or 4 or 5 states, you can see that this 1 seat potentially in Nashville flipping gets you 1 step closer if you're Republicans to regaining House control. And speaking of, Brian Kelsey's seat had a lot of East Memphis and Germantown. With him, if this passes, which it looks like it will next week, you're going to have Collierville with Brian Kelsey, and that will make his seat a little more reliably red. You remember the last couple of races, he's had extremely close races for his seats in the state Senate against Gabby Salinas. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for that specific seat. Obviously, he's facing federal charges, but those won't be dealt with until after this next election. Right.
All right, let's talk about another state Senate seat, and that is the one belonging to Katrina Robinson, at least right now. As we know, this past week, the Ethics Committee in Nashville said it was time for her to leave because she has been convicted of a crime. But a lot of her Democratic colleagues are like, well, hold on, wait a second. The whole process is not finished yet. We haven't had sentencing yet. Sentencing isn't until March, in fact. But they would really like her to step down. Ramesh Akbari, another state senator, in fact, said, I would urge, given the seriousness of this, that we make sure our colleague has adequate time to prepare and make sure her attorneys are here. We really want this to be as fair a process as possible. And even though there's hardly any exception where someone's been convicted of a federal crime where they haven't been unseated, basically, they do seem to be moving the process along fairly quickly in Nashville when it comes to Senator Robinson.
Right.
Brad?
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting, Richard, because she still has some legal proceedings in court. Senator Akbari, that was one of the reasons she and other, Senate Democrats are saying kind of tap the brakes from this, hold off, let this play out a little more for Katrina Robinson. There was a statement by the Senate Democrats saying, like any other Tennessean, Katrina Robinson deserves due process. So this is going to be an interesting situation playing out. We'll see what happens with Senator Robinson, but obviously Democrats are not happy with how this process has been speeding along so far.
Otis, I got to say, I don't understand the eagerness. After all, the GOP has a supermajority in both houses.
Right.
Whether Senator Robinson is there or not, there doesn't seem to be no harm, no foul if she were to stay and have the seat just a little bit longer as the process plays out.
Well, no question about that, and I do think that the optics here are pretty bad. Katrina Robinson has already been talking about her not being treated fairly and have been bringing race into it. And here you have a committee that is made up of 4 white men and Ramesh Akbari, African-American female, and they do seem to be rushing this quite a bit. When we've had some Republicans in the past who have done, maybe not to the degree of a felony in federal court, but they certainly have done scoundrelous things, and they didn't rush to deal with them. So yes, I mean, why rush this, especially since the original case had about 48 counts that was whittled down to 20. The judge whittled it down even more. She was convicted of 4. The judge has whittled down 2 more of those. And so who knows what Judge Cheryl Lipman will do when this case is sentenced. So I do think that they are rushing this, and it just looks bad for the legislature to be doing this when they don't have to.
Reverend Whalum, a lot of Republican senators have said they hope at the very least this applies pressure on Senator Robinson to resign on her own so they don't have to continue this process. Do you think she should?
Oh, absolutely not. I think that she is due her day in court, so to speak, in terms of the final resolution of the case. But let me say, man, that Republican pettiness is not based on race. Republicans are just petty anyway. And I think that the committee is just doing what Republican committees do. They have the majority, and as I said last week, they know how the game is played. You guys can correct me on this, but as I understand it, it is just a recommendation from this committee that they will recommend to the full Senate that Senator Robinson be ousted or expelled or whatever it is. That's just pettiness to the nth degree, but that is what it is. And the other thing I'd like to just kind of point out here is that I think it's unwise for Senator Robinson and others to say that this is based on race. I think that's a bad example for our children. I think that our children need to be taught to accept accountability and responsibility for their actions. And Senator Robinson has been convicted on 2 counts. I think probably she should sort of just kind of wait and see what the final resolution is going to be.
I think Ken makes a real good point there on that. Let's not make everything about this case a race. She is a convicted felon, and so we have to keep track of that and understand that and make sure that that doesn't get lost in this discussion. But again, there's no reason to rush this because there's, as you said, there's a supermajority of the Republicans. They don't necessarily need this vote or not have this vote to get things done.
Okay, we'll leave it there when we come back.